Well, good morning. We're back live and we have our witness with us now. And um, so we're going to have a presentation from Nika, is it?
Yep.
And regards to the Ag Innovation Board and activities and some of the things you've been working on.
Yeah.
Just a good overview.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So I'm Kanika Gandhi.
You know all of us from
Yeah.
3 years ago.
I know it's been a while since I've been in this seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kanika Gandhi with the Agency of Agriculture. I'm the Agrochemical Section Chief. So basically, overview. Last year, the AIB was created in lieu of VPAC. VPAC was disbanded officially in December of last year. This group started in January of this year. We had our first meeting February 28th. It was virtual, and it was basically an overview of, just introductions, an overview of what the legislative mandates were, a little bit more detail on kind of what we hope to achieve. And then from that meeting, and it was more meet and greedy than I had wanted it to be, only because the virtual aspect of things made it a little bit less easy to navigate a group of people who had never met each other before. However, after that meeting, I sent out a survey to everyone, basically asking them what they want to prioritize in terms of the legislative mandates. I got the results back from that. I'm still waiting on a couple more. And so then I'm going to present that to the group. Our next meeting is Monday, April 11th. And that's going to be in person at the agency across the street. So that will probably be a little bit better in terms of getting group cohesion.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a really, really great group of people. I've given you all a list of who is on the board in terms of each seat. We are still trying to find a soil biologist. That has proven difficult. I've asked 3 people. We came up with 3 names. All 3 of those people did not feel comfortable in the position, didn't feel like they had enough expertise on pesticides specifically. I tried to dissuade them from that perspective, but one was just time constraints and the other 2 didn't feel comfortable in the position. So that is something we're still looking for. It's something I'm going to present to the group on Monday and see if anyone else has suggestions for that position. But other than that, when we met, it was good. It's a really great group of people. Everyone seems really motivated and excited to be in the position. So that's kind of the overview. The next meeting will probably have more meat, so I could report back in another meeting or 2. But that's where things are at.
We had some discussion last week in regards, we were dealing with neonates.
Mm-hmm.
And we had somebody suggested that we should move that thing to the Innovation Board.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at the same time, we had people with beekeepers on, and they said they didn't have any representation on the board. And so we wanted to have this little discussion in regards to how, if we gave you the neonate issue or treated seeds issue to kind of plow through, if you didn't have somebody from apiaries or a beekeeper on the board, if that would be able to happen,
Yeah.
Where if you're going to be inviting people in to hear testimony on issues, or how you were going to work all that.
Yeah. So going back to a year ago from now, when this bill had come to you all from the House side, originally they determined the seats. We provided some suggestions. They added seats to the board, and then the change that y'all made, and when you sent it back over, was you separated. It used to be a crop consultant and a soil biologist. Then you made them 2 distinct seats, and then sent it back over. Our my thought process for all of this, because there's a wide range of issues, right? There's like plastics. We don't have a plastics expert on here. There's a bunch of different things that we are, asked to do in the mandate. And so my vision is that when, say, neonates was put into this as a mandate to look at neonates and look at the best steps or whatever.
Yeah, best practice.
Exactly, the BMPs and stuff like that. I would think that what we would do is get a panel of people representing apiaries, different types of apiaries, hopefully different sizes. And so we would have like maybe even scientific advisory groups. I know ANR, when they have a lot of their kind of panels like this, they do specific special groups and bring in experts. And so our vision was like how you all get testimony on a certain topic from the experts. We would do the same thing and bring in a group of people who are beekeepers or represent beekeepers. And as an aside, many beekeepers have reached out to me and want to be part of the conversation. And in that way, I welcome it. I send them the link to the meetings. I BCC them on every email correspondence that I send out to the group. Like, I want it to be very transparent, and I want as many minds at the table as possible, because that's how we're going to get the best outcomes. So that's my vision. But if you all want to put a beekeeper on this committee to look at neonates specifically, I mean, I don't think anyone from AAFM has a problem with that, or anyone on the committee would have a problem with that.
Well, I think we kind of want to make sure that, they get represented. If you're gonna study or look into a particular issue, you would certainly invite them.
We would need them.
And hear testimony and take it all in, which I don't know, it would be necessary to have the old saying around here, you've heard that, like maybe.
And which one? There are so many.
You don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu.
Oh,
and we would like to have them have a seat at the table, not be part of the menu. No, I think, as long as you folks are open to, and it sounds like, the first take is that you would have a group well represented of all the different products and subject areas to hear testimony from.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, if you look at even these seats, they're broad. Like an active farmer who is a member of an organization representing the organic farming community, that's just one person. The organic farming community is a very vast community of people.
Yeah.
So if we were doing something on organic agriculture or helping farmers transition to organic agriculture, I would want many voices there, not just the one person who's on the board. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? If we put a beekeeper on, that's fine. But then if there's a topic that has nothing to do with apiaries or beekeeping, it might not be relevant to them. But if you want to, if you all agree that that's really important to you and looking at neonates is super important to you, then that's fine. One thing I would caution is that there's a lot of mandates. I mean, if we pull up the language, there's a ton of mandates in the bill as it stood last year.
You folks, yeah.
And so it just kept growing and growing. And so, I mean, even this year, we're not going to get to every single one. That's why I did a survey of prioritizing what people want to look at.
Yeah.
But it could be something ongoing. I would say if you wanted to make it a priority, perhaps that should be a separate thing, looking at neonates specifically.
And the soil biologists, how often are you folks meeting, or is there a schedule set up?
Not a schedule set up, but I'm thinking it's going to be, the mandate is the legislation says at least 4 times a year. I think it's going to look like something like 6 or 7 this year. The first meeting again was pretty uneventful. I would say it was just more of an introduction.
Well, you had to get to know each other.
Exactly. And so I think we're going to start digging in this next meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
And then I think what my priority for the Monday meeting is, like, set maybe 5 or 6 goals for the year, and then start to dig into some of them and see where people are coming from on that, and then display the survey results to everyone. But I think, yeah, there's not I would like to create a set schedule.
Well,
But I'm thinking
You
every,
do long-term
Yeah.
planning that way.
Yeah.
You know, most of these people are busy
I would agree.
and they're gonna need to set their schedule.
I think it will be a Monday every other month.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Kanika, it sounds like you have a plan in mind for the topic that we've been talking about. And I would just suggest that there's at least 2 people on the committee, Sarah Bose from the Department of Health. Well, we're talking about pesticides, and maybe Ryan Rebozo, who's also, I don't want to say an expert, but certainly well-versed in the toxic substances. So that those 2 people are already sort of there. And I realize they're not necessarily representing the apiaries, but there's a tangential relationship between that topic. So as long as you're willing to let us know that when that topic comes up, maybe Sarah and Ryan would be part of that sort of panel
Yeah,
and maybe able to direct the conversation. I'm comfortable with the way things are set up. I do hope you find a soil biologist.
yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway,
isn't Heather Darby a soil biologist?
I
I
believe
know
so.
she's got her doctorate's degree and knows a lot about.
yeah,
I can reach out to her. She's someone who's very overextended, if I understand correctly. I don't know her that well, but she's on a lot of these boards and stuff like that. So
Very busy.
exactly, but I appreciate the recommendation for sure. I think when we talk as a group next, I'm sure other people will have suggestions as well. I started by talking with the secretary and with Carrie and other people at the agency, because ultimately it's the secretary's designation. But I think expanding the search a little bit will be helpful for us, and I hope to fill the seat very soon. If not before there's one more person who I'm gonna reach out to before the Monday meeting, and hopefully that works for them.
And Anthony?
Well, I was just wondering whether you could give us a sneak preview of the results of the survey.
Yeah, I didn't bring my computer, but what I can do for you is after this, I'll just compile the results and I can send you what I'm gonna send the entire board. So absolutely, I can tell you that. But basically the main one that people keep wanting to go back to is pesticide reduction overall as a whole in the state. So that's something we have to look into. And some people provided specific, one person said that neonics was a priority for them. Looking at neonics and pesticide drift. So yeah, I will absolutely get that to you. I just don't.
And remind me, what kind of power does the board have?
It's
So-
advisory
To who?
to you all.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the board said, we want to like ban glyphosate or something, you don't have the power to do that. You have the
No,
power to advise others.
So VPAC, what it replaced, the Vermont Pesticide Advisory Council, was also advisory in nature. This one's advisory in nature as well. It's providing suggestions both to the secretary and a report to all of you. To hopefully make your lives a little bit easier in that we will say, this is a policy recommendation that the AIB came up with. These are the people who testified. This was the discussion around it. And then you can do with that what you will.
Because we had a couple of years ago, we had a pollinator protection committee of some
Mhm.
sort. Do you remember that? Were you involved with that at all?
No, not really.
I think that was, well,
Nothing
we
ever
talked
came of it.
about that when we set that all up, that, if you got this group of experts in their different fields, and if they come together with a recommendation to us, it would be very most helpful.
Sure.
In kind of directing where we should go, because they're gonna have to do a lot of legwork to get to that point. And, we're here 4.5 months, maybe, and, we could spend most of the session on one topic. And, so I see this as, being very helpful if they can come to some conclusions about directing, like the microplastics issue and And to avoid the issue that happened in Maine with that soils over there. You know, if we can avoid that, if this board can look at things like that and come with recommendations, and we're, you know, we've got one, what, zero pack or D-pack, zero D-pack. And, you know, we know we're getting some microplastics through that. And, you know, and so things like that, and what somebody testified last week, I think, that if you use treated seeds and you only use 5% of the value of that seed, well, what happens to the other 95%? You know, are we over treating the seeds? You know, things like that, this board could look at and come back to us with some recommendations of correction, or if things are fine, they'd tell us that.
That's exactly the idea. That's why I think the board would be beneficial, is ultimately to provide you all with well vetted, kind of balanced policy ideas to make things move along in a way that you want, or in the way that constituents want.
Because, you know, this day and age with social media, everything is on there. You know, they tell whatever they want to tell and just write it. And then people start believing it about the fourth time they've read it. And it may not even be true. And it's a bummer trying to figure that mess out. That's caused by some scientist from a country that we never heard of, doing a white paper on it. And yeah,
Mr. Chair.
and it's only gonna get worse. Yeah, Chris, we have a guy, one of our committee members
Hi.
up there on the wall.
Hi, can
You're
how are
looking
you?
down on us. I don't know if you know that, Pierce.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's very weird. I can see myself on the screen if I move.
Oh,
Second later, I see myself move. It's freaky. This is an interesting conversation because we've acknowledged our lack of expertise and our dependence on advisory committees. But Senator Polina reminds me that I think we eliminated the Pollinator Protection Committee when we set up the Innovation Board. We folded it in there. We sort of trimmed some of these advisory boards and created this board. The Pollinator Protection Committee took its time and made a very clear recommendation about neonics that they offered to the legislature and the agency, and nothing's happened to it. So this is kind of convenient to discuss how to restart that whole process. That process has happened. It's clear. We haven't yet been willing to act. And so I'm not sure how to square those away. I want to have this discussion. I want to keep the pressure up, but we have set up our own process and apparently not trusted that process. Then we folded that board into this one. So it's a little bit, I'm not sure why we think anything different will happen this time. And Kanika, I guess I don't know, it's not fair to ask you to answer for that. You were not at the agency, but do people reference that set of recommendations? I mean, is that informing our analysis at this point?
Right. I think that the Pollinator Protection Committee was not folded in. I think what was like the Seed Review Committee. I forget what it's called, Seed Review Board, something like that. I was looking at GMOs, things like that. I think that got folded in, but I'm not sure that the pollinator one did. Regardless, I know the agency has worked on best management practices for neonics and pollinator protection in general. Where the status of those, I'm not 100% sure on. Carrie's out at a conference in Oregon, who recently joined the agency, is also at that conference in Colorado, but when they are back, I mean, I can flag it for them and get y'all an update, and have them in here to talk about that more. Because yeah, it was before my time at the agency, but I'm happy to look into it more.
And
Yeah,
no, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I'd like to understand if the pollinator protection folks are still active, still, you know, outlined in statute or what, because I remember us, maybe I am thinking of the seed. I know that was happening, but I think we also took some other, you know, responsibilities and folded it in here. So, you know, it's just frustrating. Look, these are hard issues. I don't blame folks for finding them challenging. They are challenging. They're challenging for the five of us, but sometimes when we're confronted with challenging issues, we push the question forward. And in fact, in this case, the last time we did that, we got a pretty clear analysis and set of recommendations.
So you're saying the pollinator committee was disbanded after it provided a set of recommendations for the agency to follow?
Well, I'm not correlating their recommendations and them being disbanded, but I just, maybe I'm misremembering, but I recall when we set up the innovation board that we did fold in a few sort of related outlines. But if you can do the research and tell me they're still active, that would be very helpful, because we're looking at a bill around, you know, what to do with treated seeds, which has been at the heart of pollinators' concerns, and we should hear from them if they are still active.
Yeah, agreed. I'll look into it for you, for sure.
Yeah, and
Well, they also had talked about putting together a state pollinator protection plan. That committee did, and the ag agency was supposed to do that, and it never followed through.
Yeah, so there was something along the lines of that happening in conjunction with UVM. And I don't know the status of that. I do think the person who was working on that is no longer with the agency, but I will look into it again. Yeah, it
It's just
hasn't been
because-
under my purview personally, but
Sure, no.
I should know, so I'll find out.
Well, it's a long and windy road, I'm sure, but I mean, if the previous committee actually came up with a charge to develop a plan and ask the ag agency to do that, it just seems like for you folks to then put together a pollinator or a neonic sort of task force and go through this whole process is noteworthy, but it seems like we've already done that.
Yeah,
We've already had a
yes.
group of people do that. They were a group of the same kind of, you know, diverse
Yes.
population of people, included a bunch of beekeepers, probably.
I agree. I
So-
agree with you. We've already done it once. We do it
Right.
again, so I'll get a status update for you. But when Carrie's been in here talking about the bill, the neonics bill, he hasn't brought that up.
no, and we really haven't had him in only once, maybe.
Okay,
And he's away, of course,
Yeah.
this week. And so we have him scheduled for next Tuesday.
okay,
So if we can get this info from you by
Yeah.
next week or the end of this week, it would be most helpful.
Yeah.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with due respect, this is a 3-year-old study by now. I remember asking the question when we took testimony last week on this. There's been innovations and developments in the seed industry that I think would suggest that a new look at it makes sense too.
Okay.
The glue that holds the thing together is different. The so-called clouds that everybody was seemingly worried about are much lessened, if even there at all. I mean, I think there's some innovations that have been taking place. So
Well, in reduction, I thought we heard there were only a few air planters.
that's right.
And I didn't even realize they had such a thing,
Yeah.
you know, that it was widespread, but I guess most all the new planters are going away from air planters and they're just dropping the seeds in, which that should be looked at.
Yep.
And the other thing we didn't ask, we were good listeners last week and we didn't ask a lot of questions, but I'm wondering, do the bees get in trouble when the owner takes his bees to say farm B and that to do a job? And that job is right next to a large big dairy farm where they're putting in a lot of corn, or do they get in trouble when they're home and trying to feed, themselves? That we never did ask that
No, I don't remember that
question.
question. No.
Because I would think if I owned 20 hives of bees and somebody called me and wanted to hire me to go pollinate their whatever, I think I'd be asking some questions. Well, who's within that 2-mile radius of your place that's gonna be doing something
Yeah.
to hurt my bees? Because they are expensive. We found that out. If that's where the damages happen, or does that happen near home where they're stored?
Right.
So there, Chris.
Well, I think we heard pretty clear testimony that it's happening everywhere because there's only treated seeds that are basically sold. So anywhere there's a corn growing that's not organic in Vermont is got treated seeds. And so any bee that happens by and grabs a pollen starts, and then there's the ongoing issue of it being in the soil. Nobody suggested that the air clouds or the aerated seeding process was a real factor in Vermont. But the cumulative and remember the prophylactic, this is like now 100% of our non-organic corn is treated seeds. We have no idea what the need really is. That's just what the industry is foisted. So I'd be shocked if we had any way of figuring out where the bees are picking it up. The answer is they're picking it up anywhere there's corn, and there's a ton of corn. So, we can dance around this. It is a hard topic, but if we want bees, if we want healthy bees and people believe that they're a vital part of food production and the ecosystem, then we got to ask hard questions. And I think this bill is sort of tiptoes there barely, but anyway.
But we do know that those 28 organic farms certainly aren't putting treated seeds in the ground. And there's a lot of farmers that don't put any corn in. They're strictly grass-based farmers. And so we should find out, is it just in areas where there's a lot of corn grown, or where's the issue where there's more bee kill than bees killed or seem to die off? But I should think, I'm going to stand on what I said. The owner of the bees should kind of ask a couple of questions before he turns them loose to see if they're going to get bumped off. If there's a lot of large farms that are growing hundreds of acres of corn, in that area, I wouldn't take my bees there.
Sure, but recall the testimony that bee apiaries have to be separated by some 2 miles or whatever it is by our rules. And that the testimony was because of that, there's limited, and because of corn, that was the testimony, was the moment one of the areas where one could keep bees opens up based on that 2 mile intersection, the first thing they're doing is looking to see what neighbors are growing corn. And we have thousands of acres of corn. I mean, it's not, I hear the undertone of, I think what I hear from you, Mr. Chair, is like, look, if I'm growing corn and a bee comes onto my property and gets in trouble, that's sort of hard to blame the farmer. I don't totally disagree with that, but nor do we, the entire starting point is, I don't know if I need it. I'm just going to prophylactically plant treated seeds because that's what they'll sell me. That's also sort of upside down. And that's where we need to, frankly, just have a better handle on the need and the science of the impact.
Well, that's why we need, hopefully somebody, this board could look into that and come back with, if you've just lost $50,000 worth of bees, you're gonna tell us the best story you can of what happened to them bees. If you have this scientific board set up, they're gonna wade through that, that personal stuff, and maybe we could get better and more clear answers. And I don't doubt that, these things aren't, I don't think there's any pesticide that's good for a bee to run into. But you've got to weigh all that out and try to come to some logical conclusion of how to work it out. Maybe those seeds are being treated too heavily. Maybe they're being treated with, could be treated with something else that would protect the seed from the grubs and the wireworms that wouldn't kill the bees. There's got to be some answers to all this. But one guy testified last week, I think, that this isn't just happening here in Vermont. It's happening all over. And you take, New Hampshire's only got a couple hundred farms, if they've even got that many. Connecticut's got, 250. Massachusetts is, I think they're down under 200. So, we've got some larger states than us that have fewer farms, and they're running into the bee issue too. So, I don't know what the answer is to it all, but there's a lot more questions than there are remedies, I think.
Have you taken testimony from people using the seeds on seed choice and availability and opportunities for them to, because the way I understand it is the price differential between coated and uncoated seeds is quite significant.
It's the same.
It's the same.
That's what we heard last week.
Yep.
Interesting.
It's just
And,
that it's hard to find those treated seeds, you have to order them way ahead of time.
Yeah.
and then if
Basically,
you,
you got the whole thing, if there's alternatives out there, we all know that, but
Mhm.
basically, we're dealing with an industry that's controlling the decision making before we get to get involved.
Right.
If it's all you can buy, it's all you can buy.
Right.
you
So
know.
availability is an issue.
availability of non-treated. But if they ordered them in December or November, December, they could get untreated, but then you have to spray
Mhm.
in that broadcast spray. And then you have to side dress the field. And so you're running over your field and compacting the soils more and more, which is not good because of runoff. And I mean, it's a big issue. And we certainly don't want to lose our pollinators. But to figure out what the heck the alternative is pretty difficult. So they didn't the big apiary guy testify that other states are losing their bees as well?
I thought I remember that.
Sure.
Do you remember hearing that, Chris? That we.
Yeah, of course. 90, the testimony was 97% of all corn planted in this country is with treated seeds and with zero connection to whether or not there's a need. So this is not actually a mystery, right? This is the bee population strong in Europe where neonics treated seeds are banned. They're doing better in Ontario where there's a more limited approach to who can use treated seeds. I gather it's considered a ban or it must prove that you need it, but I gather it's not onerous. It's sort of a quick scouting and check a box. Yes, I need it, but it creates a step. So you're seeing way less treated seed there, stronger bee population. It's not actually a mystery. It's being used everywhere. It's being, substituted the treated seed for regular seed so that consumers, farmers don't really have a straightforward way of avoiding them. And this is the place we find ourselves in. But I don't think we should pretend it's a big mystery. It's quite straightforward. And the folks that, in this industry, in the beekeeping world, are not wondering if it's related to treated seeds and neonics. They're unequivocal that that's the connection, that's the timeline, that it matches the change in the industry. And again, it's not an easy choice, but we shouldn't pretend that we're wondering what's going on. It's quite straightforward, it seems to me.
Well, we certainly haven't talked with anybody from Ontario or
I think that'd be great.
not even from some other state to see what's happening in their state. And maybe we should try to contact somebody at the agricultural Ministry of Agriculture in Ontario and talk with their person that's equivalent to Carrie and see what's happening up there. And the secondhand information is it's okay for some things, but
maybe the Farm Bureau of Ontario too, if the agencies aren't that interested, they could tell us how onerous their approach is. Thanks.
If there is such we'll have to check with.
I'm sure there's a Dairy Farmers of Canada organization. At least there used to be. They're sort of.
Yeah, I gotta believe. Mr. Chair, I got to duck out and call Ledge Council. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, there are other. Have fun.
So you're the staff person for this?
For the Ag Innovation Board. Yeah.
Right. But that's not your only job.
No, I also oversee, well, actually, I'm transitioning away from overseeing the field agents and stuff like that. We're shifting a little bit our internal organization. So
I'm just saying, I'm wondering, like, if you're going to do a whole neonicotinoid, let's say, project, it's your job to do the scheduling and make sure it happens and all that kind of stuff, do all that grunt work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy lift. This is quite a crew you've gotta get organized to come to the meetings and add the agenda and the witnesses and set up to, you know.
Yeah, it's all been very exciting. In terms of your question, it would probably be a combination of me, Carrie, and I think, have you all met Morgan Griffith yet? I think she's been doing more of the house side stuff, but I'm sure she'll be in here at some point. We hired her last year. And she's a policy and research specialist, so she's also gonna help with the neomics quite a bit, I imagine. Yeah.
Any other questions?
It might be good for her, I don't know whether, I assume it's her, or it's a person. To start off, like, it'd be nice to get a recap of how this came to happen. The Pollinator Protection Committee, that sort of a little bit of a historical perspective on what did they recommend, and
Yeah,
sort of
I can-
how did we end up where we are.
if Carrie's in here next week, I'll get that together, I'll talk to him and get some of the historic stuff that was before I was there, but I can definitely help weave a story for
Right.
you and get something for you for next week, absolutely, yeah.
So, it sounds like you're gonna be quite busy. Are you getting a good return from your questionnaire, or is that looking?
Yeah, there's a couple people who are still outstanding.
Yeah.
3 of them still need to send it back to me.
And what would be the number of people that would be on a panel that would be looking into this issue of the neonics?
I mean, I think that's something I would bring to the board. I don't think there needs to be a minimum or a maximum,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think the more the merrier, in my opinion. If it's 2 people kind of representing exactly the same, not exactly the same, but the similar types of operations or stuff like that, I
Yeah.
don't feel a strong need to have everyone come in, but I would say more is better. You know, the more opinions we can get and the more perspectives we can get, the more informed any legislation or recommendation we come up with will be.
Yeah, okay.
The best committee I ever served on was a committee of 1. That was very efficient.
The meetings were pretty short, weren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you sit there and look in the mirror
Yeah.
and.
Oh, the predate Zoom, then more
No.
criminal technology.
Bobby.
Well, I don't understand how yours work either.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the angel and the devil.
Yeah.
Well, I never got lucky enough to be a committee of 1. Been a committee of 3 for a lot of times. But anyways, did you have any questions of us?
No, I mean, I think I'll come back in at some point, probably in May or towards the end of the session and give you more of an update. Yeah, whenever, closer to the end and after we've had another meeting or 2. And then, any recommendations you all have, I mean, a lot of the way that the operation, a lot of that freedom was given to the secretary to come up with, but if you want to see X number of people on every panel, or, you know, if there are things like that that come up, I'm open to them. From the public too, like, this is a new board, this is a new concept. Yeah, sure, there are things that are, you know, folded into this, but it is different.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna be a work in progress, and so therefore I'm really open to anything, any suggestions. I want it to be a very transparent process between the public, the agency, all the members, and the legislators. So
Yeah,
that's where I'm at.
you couldn't ask for much more.
Yeah.
No? No? Well, do you have any questions? You're gonna have to start going to work, you know.
Hopefully, I can just continue how I'm going.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you all. It's good to
Yeah.
see you in person.
Well,
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
And we've got plenty we've loaded a lot on your plate.
Yes.
Before and again today. So, yeah, so we'll plan maybe to see how your work is going, but we'll try to get you back in. But, you know, we're on the downhill side of things. And we're supposed to go home at the end of the first week in May, so, but if we don't, you know, if things don't work out, so we get to see you this spring. We'll certainly, whoever's here would certainly want to see you in January.
Yeah, we have the part of the legislation is we have to do a report back to the legislature by, have that report ready by January 15th of next year. So you'll definitely see.
That would-
again.
Yeah, and then we can measure you up.
I don't know what that.
Well, to see if you did a good job or a bad job.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine. So if there isn't anything else, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. How old is the volleyball team?